welcome back. With Monday comes real estate, and with real estate comes professionals who really do know the industry inside and out. Today, right now, Russ Katz joins us from Windermere Real Estate, a top broker with tons of reviews online testifying to your expertise, so you don't have to take it from me. You can go on the good old internet, and they'll prove it. Russ Katz, welcome, buddy. How you doing?
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, it's good to see you. And, you've been in the real estate game for a while now.
Yes, I have. Let's see. It's almost coming up on 7 full years here this summer. So it's been a great run. Actually, the last 3 or 4 years have really been my 3 or 4 best years. So it's been a phenomenal stretch. And you are correct. The market is as hot as the weather these days.
Good. I'm glad somebody's listening. So, Russ, let's talk. Okay, well, with the market being hot,
yep.
People are actually, and they even talked about this actually on King 5 News last night, that there are not enough houses on the market. Inventory is low,
right? Which
means a lot of sellers are getting a lot more offers than they maybe know what to do with.
Right.
Talk a little bit about how you think, what is a seller supposed to look at? You get all these offers, which are all 20 pages long.
Right.
They're mostly boilerplate, a lot of boilerplate, and then you have these pretty specific items that you really need to look at, right?
Correct. Yeah. So, I think some of the important steps to getting multiple offers start well in advance of even putting the home on the market. It's kind of during the preparation process. So the two big fundamentals in our industry are price and condition. And when I mean condition, obviously you start outside, you start with the front door, you start with the curb appeal. When people drive up, they either have that, aha, the home is going to be fantastic, or they have that, ew, we need to really go through this and bring every inspector and contractor. So you first got to start with the condition of the home, start outside, move inside.
And a lot of that's the aesthetic piece, too. That's that initial...
Yep. You only have one chance to make a first impression, as they say. And so then when you look into value, you start looking at putting together a market analysis, and you start using comparable properties, and you start using inventory levels. And yes, you're correct. We're painting a broad brush statement here, but we're off almost 40% of our inventory from last year in Metro Bellevue, Metro Seattle. So you use those two factors, you get the analysis together, and then you endorse a fair market value range. And if you are within that range, and if you have the good condition, the two big fundamentals, there is a very strong likelihood that in this market currently, in the last maybe 120 days, I would say about 4 months, you could be getting more than one offer, maybe as many as 3, 4, or 5 even.
And so how do you choose? You're a seller, you're like, God, I need to move. I got to get out of town, or, my baby's coming, or whatever it may be.
Well, so, it's a great question. I get asked that all the time. And frankly, the best answer is that it's situational. It's situational to that seller, to that situation. So the first thing every seller is going to love is the price. And they're going to say, oh, boy, someone's offering more money. Let's just, take that. And I think what we really need to do is kind of prepare that seller for this situation if we believe that the condition is great, the value is good, and that we're going to attract multiple offers. So to not kind of be in a panic mode when that happens, but to kind of take a step back, prepare the seller that this, in fact, may happen. When we actually do get those multiple offers, how do we strategize with the seller to make sure that we select the best one and proceed through the inspections, proceed through the appraisal, unless they're buying with cash, and get all the way to closing? It's really, a variety of factors. Obviously, price is big. The inspection timelines, the financing guidelines, how much money someone is putting down. But then there's also things like, maybe who the agent is. To me, all things being equal, if I have 2 exact offers, same price, same contingencies, same guidelines, if I have any whiff that this agent has done a fair amount of business in the last couple of years, or I know them, or, I've seen their name out there a bunch, that's going to carry a little bit of weight. If I can know the lender, if the lender is someone local, whether it's through Cobalt or whether it's through Wells Fargo, whether it's in the private division here or there, there are small little idiosyncrasies that can play a factor in determining, hey, this is the offer we want to work with. How can we maybe strategically try to get a little more money, or tighten some of those contingencies, some of those timelines. So
so really, when you start thinking about those, oftentimes these sound like things that the average seller isn't going to know. If you're not in the industry,
yep,
you're not going to know who a good lender is on the other side.
Absolutely.
You're probably not going to know which real estate agents do a lot of business, other than maybe you see their signs all over your neighborhood, which I guess would be a good telltale.
Yeah.
But you're not going to know a lot of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what it comes down to is there's all these parts of the contract that are on the paper.
Right.
But then there's all the people who are actually working on the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And that is important too.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how much, even in this day and age, especially the last 3-4 years, but even the last 120 days, the financial viability of someone being able to perform is just huge. And it's certainly there's a threshold of maybe taking 5,000 or 7,000. It depends on the price point. Maybe we should talk percentages. There's a threshold of taking a lesser percentage from a competing offer if you know that the deal is going to get done. If you take maybe the higher offer, and again, there is that threshold. You might be willing to take less. Maybe a certain seller, and it's situational, a certain seller may not be willing to take 1 or 2 or even 3 or 4% less money, because you may run into appraisal issues down the road. You may run into lack of financial viability if they have bad, or mediocre credit or mediocre debt to income ratios or, mediocre assets or reserves. So, that is absolute. We always say cash is king. That's the old phrase, right? And it is. But financial viability as a whole is king in my world.
And really that means that the seller's going to get the money in some way or another. Because, coming from the mortgage business, it's amazing how often we end up quote unquote saving a deal because somebody goes with an online lender because they saw a great deal. And they're not going to close on time. And now it's the 11th hour. And now with the real estate market heating up, people are concerned that, well, maybe they're just going to back out. Now they're going to go with somebody else. And now you have massive stress on the potential for getting something done.
Absolutely. And in fact, all the attorneys in the Northwest Multiple Listing Service recently adjusted the financing addendum to give the seller the right to terminate the contract if the buyer is not performing his or her due diligence. And so I can't express how much, the financing relates into selecting a multiple offer. However, in this market, we're also seeing a sizable amount of cash offers. And so, certainly cash is even king-er, if that's a phrase, right?
It's the pharaoh.
Yeah, there you go.
What's the process for choosing these offers? Do you look at something? Is there an order that you think people should look in?
Well, yeah. So I think, this is, and every agent or broker, I suppose, does and could handle it differently. And frankly, that's always interesting when you're on the other side, when you're a buyer's agent, because you don't really know the process of how this agent or that agent is going to handle it. But the way that I would typically handle it is that I would, let all the agents know. I'm going to play very fair game, so to speak, and let all the agents know that, to let, in turn, their buyers know that there is a competing offer situation. And if they would like, they even have the ability, if time allows and if they'd like, to do what we call a pre-offer inspection, where they could hire a home inspector and thoroughly inspect, including a separate sewer inspection. That's been a big thing the last 5 years. So people have the opportunity to do that. And then basically what we do is we set a timeline. We set, whether it's Friday at 3 o'clock or we set Sunday at 9 a.m., and where basically the offers are due in. And I typically set that about an hour before I meet with the seller, so they come into my desk. Maybe I, in fact, meet with those agents. Some people like to present, in fact, the offers. It just depends on, do most folks like to do it, or do they not? But once we collect the offers, I'll take a glance at them. I'll have the sellers come into the office. We'll sit down. We'll review them. And obviously, as we previously talked about, everyone's going to go right to the purchase price.
Absolutely.
That's
that was a good
one.
snap, by the way.
But, we'll look at things like closing dates. We'll look at things like, paragraph X of Form 21, which was recently added as well, which is basically a disclaimer for a buyer to get out of the contract. We'll look at the Form 17, the seller disclosure statement that every seller by law has to present unless it's selling as an estate. We'll look and see if that form has been signed with the right to revoke an offer, with the right to even receive that completed Form 17. So there are ways in the contract that a buyer's agent can really, really strengthen his or her offer. And if we have a tight offer, that's going to help. Yeah.
Do you think most people, not necessarily in the real estate game, but most of your people who are buying or selling houses, understand how important some of those things in the contract can be to a deal?
Absolutely not. No way. No one does. Very few people do. I've even had situations this year, as crazy as it sounds, where we've done non-refundable earnest money, where I've had a buyer actually say they want the house this bad. We've done a pre-offer, so I've been a buyer's agent, and in this situation as well. And where I have a buyer making an offer on a competing situation. We've done everything we can. We've done the pre-inspections. We've crossed off certain paragraphs, strengthened our offer. We've had a real quick closing date. We've upped our earnest money. Earnest money is a term. We have price and terms. And when you start getting all the terms, the only other thing you can really do is make your earnest money non-refundable. And we actually had a client this year. I had a client this year who made his and her earnest money non-refundable, payable to the seller upon acceptance. So that's like really the biggest and last, and it's a super strong play. I mean, if the seller is in breach of contract, you've given your seller the money. It's not easy once you've given money to get it back. Yeah, you could sue them. I mean, we don't want to go down that path. But, basically what I'm trying to say is that there are a few bullets in the gun, so to speak, to fire in a competing situation. And very few people, I think, understand that they have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bullets to fire.
You talked about playing a fair game, and you talk about bullets to fire. You're not trying to create crossfire for keeping the same term, keeping it the same analogy. When you talk about playing a fair game, you're really talking about what? I mean, you're not trying to play people against each other? I mean, what is it?
No, not, and sorry if that was the connotation. No,
No, I was saying, I mean, that's, because you had said play a fair game, but then we're bringing up guns.
Well, yeah. I see where you're going with that. No, the fair game comment is only that, look, it's not very difficult for someone to become a licensed real estate salesperson in the state of Washington. I mean, yeah, we up the hours, so you get 60 hours, you take a full cut. You pay a fee. There's a lot of, average Joes out there, I think, who have a license, who represent, their cousin or their brother. And so everybody handles it differently. And, there are some larger companies, there are some smaller firms, and, it's just the kind of thing where it's, real estate's not a commodity. You're not going to go in and buy a carton of milk for $2.18. It's a lot of it changes and shifts, and there are some folks, unfortunately, in our industry, like I think almost every industry, that don't play by the rules, that change the rules or don't play fair. And so, the biggest thing that I do when I'm the listing broker handling a multiple offer situation is letting every and any all party know exactly what we're doing, when we're doing it, so it's totally, totally fair.
Do you think that then experience that an agent brings is pretty big? I mean, when you talk about the average Joe. Yeah. No, absolutely. To me, that's another thing that I don't think the public really understands. So let's say you've listed a property and you're getting multiple offers. Or I should say, if you're listed a property and it's been sitting on the market for 3 months. I mean, when you get an inquiry from a buyer's agent or directly from a buyer, there's a lot that you can say or don't say that helps your seller. And I think most people don't know that. They think, oh, it's just going to, put on the market, and whatever the market bears is what we're going to sell for. And yeah, there is truth to that. But I think there's delivery, there's content, there's language that someone can use and execute to represent their client even better than the average Joe. We're here with Russ Katz with Windermere Real Estate. Russ, just have a couple minutes left before we have to go to break. So when you start looking at all these factors, the price, the financing, if it's going to be cash, all the contingencies, the inspections, the escalations, all of this makes it feel like that's a lot to consider when you're making or accepting an offer. Where does a good agent help somebody decide?
Again, it's a great question. It gets back to that situation of what does your client want? What does your seller want? Does your seller want to sell quick? Do they want to sell, are they looking for a place to buy? So do they need more time? Do they want to do a rent back, like occupancy after closing? So, you really got to look situationally and say what best applies to this specific seller. What do they want, and how can I help them get as close to, what they want? And there are a lot of pieces to it. I mean, it's one of those things that, every day is kind of a different day. Every offer could be a different offer. But it's the one time, I suppose, where if you're representing a seller and you have competing offers, You have that one opportunity to tell your seller that, hey, you have a little leverage in this deal right now. We have 4 or 5 people who want to buy your house, or 2 people, whatever the situation is. You have a little leverage. Do you want to do a holdback? Do you want to do a rent back? Do you do you want to close sooner? Do you want to tighten up the inspection timelines? I mean, we can ask for that because some people are really, really enthusiastic and they want to buy your house. And this is the one chance we have to maybe get that leverage.
Do you think that the enthusiasm will continue? What do you see going on in the real estate market here in the near future?
Forecasting is so hard. I can barely predict the weather, let alone.
Well, you and everybody else.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's the $10 million question, whatever it is. I think our fundamentals are rock solid here. Our jobs are great. The nation's largest home builder, the Toll Brothers, have bought over 100 lots here on Lakemont at the Belvedere section. They bought another 40 or 50 in the city. They're very bullish in the Northwest through Cam West. That's their division now here. We have all the big companies. I even think even in the downturn, we weren't really necessarily isolated from it all, but we were somewhat insulated. It never really got as bad as a lot of people out there read and saw nationally or globally. So I think...
And now we seem to be having a pretty quick bounce back here over the last 6 months.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I think if you're in Metro Bellevue, Mercer Island, Metro Seattle, any other job centers, you're in good shape. You're in high demand. We have population growth here that almost outweighs the housing because none of the builders built the last 4 or 5 years. You get out to the little more of the outlying areas, you get out to Renton or Tukwila, or you get up to Everett or Linwood, and, you get east to the Bend, North Bend, you're going to see a little more distressed property, a little longer, a little slower to recover. And I think that goes situationally in submarkets, too. If you look at the high-end condo market, it's taking a little longer to come back. If you look at the entry-level housing market, it's bounced awfully big off the bottom in the last 4 or 5 months. So you got to look at the submarkets, too.
Russ, we got to go to break. Thanks so much for joining us. Stick around at the end of the hour. We'll get some more opinions here going. Russ Katz with Windermere Real Estate, and certainly it's good information. When you're out there buying or selling, the contracts are big, they're vast, and you're not expected to know everything that's in them. You're not supposed to. You might work at Microsoft. We don't. Russ probably doesn't know how to develop software.
I don't.
He doesn't. In fact, we now know he doesn't. It doesn't mean that you need to know how to do a real estate contract. That's why you find people who can. Now, we have to go to break. When we come back, Ryan Leopold's going to join us. Guess what? The banks are in the news again. We're going to discuss.